Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Taos Institute gathering, Unfolding Dialogues, Relational Resources for Global Good, our week-long series of virtual global events. I am Dawn Dole, the Executive Director of the Taos Institute and your Zoom host for today's global plenary. So the Taos Institute is a nonprofit educational organization dedicated to developing, sharing, and expanding social constructionist theory and practice. We focus on relational, collaborative, appreciative, and dialogic practices, and we bring together scholars, practitioners, students, and the ever curious from various disciplines like organizational change, leadership, education, therapy, healthcare, research, and more. We have many publications, both printed and free downloads on our website. We also offer workshops and conferences, both in person and virtual like this one. We have a diploma program. We offer other programs like dialogues with the authors. And we have so many resources on our website, articles and dissertations and videos. So please feel free to go there. Alex is putting the link to our main website in the chat now, so you have that. And for this week, we are so excited that we have over 60 events happening this week in a variety of languages at various time zones and hosted by people from around the globe. We have people joining us this week from 37 countries. And we're all here to explore, learn, share, and co-create practices from the local to the global that focus on how social constructionist ideas and practices can help us create and bring forward new ways of going on together in a world facing global challenges in this ever increasingly volatile and complex world. We need innovative ideas and practices of promise for our ways of relating with each other now more than ever. So thank you all for joining us in this week-long adventure together. And now we are so excited about our Global Connection plenary today, titled Dialogues Across Divides. Our hosts for this session are Diana Whitney and Ken Gergen, and our guest today is Bill Doherty from the organization Braver Angels. Braver Angels is an organization dedicated to crossing divides. Using crafted practices of dialogue, they bring people together from polarized political parties or on opposite sides of a major issue to create mutual understanding. We are thrilled to be here to learn about their work. And now I'd like to introduce Diana and Ken so we can spotlight them. Diana is founder and president emerita of the Corporation for Positive Change, a consulting firm dedicated to creation of appreciative organizations. She is an internationally recognized consultant, an inspiring keynote speaker, and a pioneering thought leader on appreciative inquiry, positive change, appreciative leadership, and spirituality at work. She is a co-founder of the Taos Institute, a fellow of the World Business Academy, and a distinguished faculty with Saybrook University, and a dear friend that I've known for many, many years. I'm so happy you're here, Diana. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ken Gergen, as you know, is senior research professor of psychology at Swarthmore College and the president and a co-founder of the Taos Institute. He is internationally known for his contributions to social constructionist theory, technology, and cultural change, and relational theory and practice. Among his major writings are Realities and Relationships, Soundings in Social Construction, The Saturated Self, Dilemmas of Identity in Contemporary Life, an invitation to social construction and relational being beyond self and community. Gergen has received numerous awards for his work, including honorary degrees in both US and Europe. And Ken, it is an honor to again welcome you here as our host for the conversation today. Again, dear friend and just colleague of many, many years. So thank you both for being here. And then let's bring Bill on, our guest for today. Bill, we're so excited you are here. Bill is co-founder of Braver Angels and the creator of the Braver Angels workshop approach. Bill is a professor and director of the Minnesota Couples on the Brink Project in the Department of Family Social Science at the University of Minnesota. I don't think it's snowing up there yet, but Minnesota is well known for its winter snow.
Yes, it is snowing.
It is, okay. Bill combines a background in family therapy and community engagement. His areas of interest include democratic community building with families, citizen healthcare, marriage, fatherhood, families dealing with chronic illness, and marriage and couples therapy. So thank you so much, Bill. We are really excited to hear about your work with Braver Angels and just feel like it's so pertinent to our conversations this week.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
And Alex is putting a couple links in the chat for you about some Braver Angels videos and resources, so you all have that available. And I'm going to jump off screen here.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Dawn. My own feeling is that this has a very close personal significance for me and a lot of this audience, because we have been through 6 years of torment and strife with communities, with families and so on, who are polarized. We feel unsafe with conversations, even with our close neighbors. It's become almost a sickness within the society. And even within my family, there's been tensions which have made it impossible to talk about many things. So when I discovered Braver Angels, I thought, fantastic. This was like, we have many people who've commented on the things, how to talk with people you disagree with. You see them all over but you are actually doing something about it. It was Braver Angels that were stepping into community spaces and actually initiating these kinds of conversations, even in the halls of government. And then to think that this was actually from sort of ground up, that you in particular, coming out of family therapy, who've been able to move into this national and possibly international arena with such efficacy, it was just striking. So I'm really pleased to have you here. And Diana, why don't you lead off here?
Well, I too join Ken in saying welcome. Your work is magnificent. I think we all feel those divides. So our first curiosity, Bill, is a description of Braver Angels. Would you tell us about it? You work with diverse audiences, as Ken mentioned. What is Braver Angels? What do you all do? We're particularly curious about practices.
Yeah, well, thank you. And just let me say how honored I am to be here. And it's particularly special to have an international group here. And I'll be very interested at a point at which we engage the audience, what people's reflections are, because this came out of the US political polarization. And I do understand that there is polarization around the world. So I'll be interested to see what the implications are internationally. But briefly, Braver Angels is a nonprofit that is committed to bridging the political partisan divide, reducing polarization, and strengthening our democracy, which has been under risk and threat for some time. And we do this through workshops, where some of which we bring what we call reds and blues in American parlance, people who lean more conservative, more Republican, people who lean more liberal, more Democrat. We bring them together to understand each other beyond stereotypes, to look for common ground. We also have a whole series of workshops in which we teach people the attitudes and skills for managing political differences. And then we, in recent years, we're just 5.5 years old, but in the last couple of years, we've been doing more work with elected officials, with media, with some businesses. And so we've sort of expanded beyond the workshops for everyday citizens to kind of larger networks. I'll say one other thing, just as we get going, is that a key dimension of this is that our leadership is half red, half blue, half liberal, half conservative. So our board, our leadership group, our state coordinators, all of whom are volunteers. We have local alliances. And so our cardinal principle is that at every level of leadership, we are a half one side of the division and one half the other, which allows us to really walk our talk, because we are engaged in these relationships, in these conversations with one another all the time. So it's really quite a thrilling experience to be part of.
And so as you think on the work, particularly, I'm curious now with your board, that you yourself are a leadership team that, as you described, red and blue. Tell us a story about a time when you hit the divide, you hit the wall, and how did you talk through it? Tell us a high point story from your experience as a leadership team with such big differences.
Yes, what immediately came to mind was after January 6th, when we were, so many Americans were traumatized by what happened at our Capitol, and it was hard to hold on to our mutuality at that point, because many of our blue leaders were hoping that our red leaders would unambiguously condemn Donald Trump, and some of them had voted for Trump and others not, but they were not prepared to walk away from Trump at that point. And many of the blues were beyond indignant. So we had some very important conversations at that point, include as a group. The steering group, the board is sort of at the top level, and they raise money and so on, but the leadership group that meets every week is really the group I'm talking about. And so we talked as a group. We also did one-to-ones. I was on Zoom calls with people, seeking to understand, and we got through that, but that was a tough one. Another one was when we had an internal division about whether to have a debate. I did mention we have a debate program too, where we have a organized civil disciplined way of bringing people together to debate topics, and so somebody proposed that we debate the topic of whether the U.S. presidential election of 2020 was stolen, or whether it was basically free and fair. And we had some members of the leadership team who believed, these are blues, who believed that by having a debate about whether that election was fraudulent or fair, that we would be validating lies and ignorance, because they said there's no proof that it was stolen, and that to have the debate, to have the discussion, if you will, was itself wrong. And we had a whole series of conversations about that, which helped us clarify who we are. And one of the things we did, we also have a podcast series, and so we had people who were on different sides of that issue in our leadership group on a podcast discussing their differences in a Braver Angels way.
Great.
And then we actually went ahead with the debate. And one of the speakers at the debate, because there's always some people who speak at the beginning who are prepared to come and speak, and then it's for whoever wants. He came to the debate to make the point that we should not be having the debate. And so that was kind of at a meta level. Okay, we stayed in the dialogue and we allowed into the dialogue those who thought this topic we should not be having a dialogue about. And it worked. It worked. It was beautiful. So those are two. Thank you for that question. Nobody's ever asked me that question before, but those were two of the kind of crisis points where we had to decide who we were in our hearts.
Well, Bill, yeah.
And Ken, I want to just pull one idea out and then turn it over to you, because I know you've got a couple of questions simmering. But what I hear, Bill, in all of this is being brave to put anything on the table. There are no secrets. Yeah. There are no topics that we don't talk about. We are really out there and putting everything on the table. So that's a very, very interesting theme for me. Ken?
Well, I'm curious. You talk about debate, and it seems to me it does get things out there, but it leaves us very often with differences. That is, I don't find my mind is often changed by the opponent on a debate. That we still end up in our polarized positions, only better informed about the opposition. But let me ask you about the.
Well, could I respond to that, Ken?
Yeah. Yes, please.
I invite you to attend a Braver Angels debate.
Yeah. All right.
Because they're not opponents. It's framed as a collective search for the truth.
All right. And
people are encouraged to change their minds, to learn from others, and find common ground. And that's nearly universally what happens.
Yeah. Well, the question would be, how do you then scaffold that debate in such a way that happens?
Yes.
Because here, if you just organize a debate in our community, it would end up in a shouting match.
Yes. Yes.
And possibly even physical abuse.
Yeah.
It's happened.
Well, so for the debate program, there's a group of reds and blues who choose the topic, frame the resolution, and then invite the first four speakers, four on one side of it, four on the other, who understand our ground rules and how to present themselves. So among the ground rules is that you speak for yourself. You don't speak for another organization. You speak with respect. And then when you finish your turn, there are questions that can be asked, that you're asked, and those questions are directed to the chair. So if you had just spoken, Ken, for 4 minutes on a topic, and Diana was the chair, it's actually very formal. I would say, Madam Chair, I wonder if the prior speaker has considered this information that I'm aware of that I didn't hear him refer to. And then you get your 2 minutes to respond to that. Whereas if I turn to you, Ken, and say, "Oh, Ken, how did you miss that information that you're supposedly an expert on," right? So we in all of our workshops we create guardrails that we enforce, and then we try to engage lots and lots of people. So you and I was a debater in high school, it was 2 against 2. We have people who start this out, but over the hour and a half or 2 hours, so I've been in ones in person as well as on Zoom. I remember when I was one in Minnesota, it was about whether capitalism has a future or we should, get rid of it. By the time the hour and a half or 2 hours was over, 2/3 of the people in the room had spoken in some way, had asked a question, had gotten up to speak. And we have this little process where you you hit your leg in applause for somebody, like bing, 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 and you're encouraged if somebody who disagrees with you makes a point that you agree with, you're encouraged to show your affirmation of that, and just for the courage for people to get up and say something, and so there is this continual affirmation that's occurring during the time. So it's not like anything that I ever experienced before.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting. Have you published or put out what I would call those guardrails? How it is that you prepare people for the debates? What are the rules for continuing? Is that available publicly?
Yeah, they're on our website. You go to debates, and I'm sure, I haven't checked recently, but I'm sure most of that is on there. It comes out of so much of what we do is just harvesting the talent of our group. So April Lawson Cornfield has been around with Raver Angels for a long time, and she experienced this at Yale when she was a student, a particular kind of respectful debate that is a collective search for the truth. And so she brought it in, and then we've refined it over time. But a key is, and I keep coming back to this, reds and blues picking the topics, reds and blues inviting the opening speakers. And people spend a lot of time working on those topics.
Okay. Let me just go to because a lot of what you do isn't debate. It seems to be it's workshops where you bring people together. Sure. And I'm really interested to hear about that. What that looks like in action. Yeah.
So our kind of foundational workshop is we call the red blue workshop, where we bring 8 reds, conservatives, 8 liberals together for either 3 hours or a full day. And the goals are to understand each other beyond stereotypes and find common ground when it's there. We lead people through a series of exercises that are designed to allow people to listen to each other and to express both what they love about their political perspective and their concerns about their own side. And so the very first exercise is called the stereotypes exercise. In separate rooms, the reds and blues answer these 2 questions. What are the most common false, negative, exaggerated stereotypes of your side? What do people think of reds or blues, liberals, conservatives, that is false, exaggerated, and misinformed? And so they brainstorm those and they list them. So for reds, it's usually they think we're racist, they think we are anti-science, that we don't care about the poor, we're anti-woman, we are Bible thumpers, which is a U.S. term for overly religious and dogmatic. And for the blues, it's often we're arrogant. They think we're arrogant and elitist. They think we're into big government for its own sake, grow the government more. We're unpatriotic. We're anti-religion. We're baby killers around abortion. And then you answer 2 questions. Each side answers 2 questions. The first is, well, what's the correction of the stereotype? What's true instead about you? So they think you're racist. Say what you believe about yourselves is not racist. You're into big government for its own sake? Well, no, what's the role of government? And then the second question is there a kernel of truth in the stereotype? Is there a kernel of truth in the stereotype? Mm-hmm. And a kernel of truth may be it's accurate for some people on your side. It has some historical carryover to it. It may be that in the heated rhetoric of public debate, your side comes across this way. So a number of ways to think about a kernel of truth. And so each side comes up with those. And then they come together and share with the other group. These are what we think people think of us. Here's how we see ourselves. And here is where we think there is some truth in the stereotype. And when they can land the kernels of truth, it's really powerful. It's really powerful. I remember a red blue workshop I did where around racism, of course, which is the harshest of these stereotypes, the Reds said, most Reds are conservatives are not racist, but unfortunately, there are racists in our midst. That most racists are Reds. And this is deeply troubling to us, that these folks are attracted to our side. Or we have leaders, they think we're anti-immigrant. No, we're children of immigrants, and we want immigrants. We want a lawful way for immigrants to come in. But we have some leaders who come across as anti-immigrant, and this is distressing to us. On the Democratic side, on the blue side, they will often admit that blues in America many blues come across as arrogant and elitist. We're the smart ones in the room, and you are the dumb ones. We are morally superior. You're the racist, and we believe in human dignity. Around big government programs, for example, they will sometimes say we tend to rush to a government solution when maybe there could be solutions at the grassroots level. So my point is they share this with each other, and then Reds and Blues pair up to answer two questions. What did you learn about how the other side sees themselves? What did you learn about how people on the other side see themselves? And did you see anything in common? Okay, and so they do that in pairs, and then they share around the table. And here's where the ground rules and the guardrails are. People have been offered this ground rule, asked to agree to it, that they will only talk about the question on the table and nothing else. So your job is, what did I learn about people on the other side, and what did I see in common? That's all you can talk about. So I train the moderators to intervene, and this is difficult for people who are used to, facilitating dialogues. You stop somebody mid-sentence if they veer off those. You don't let them finish their thought, because these are red blue workshops are more like couples therapy than if you let, I'm a couples therapist. If you let one partner speak for the other, interrupt the other, and you let them get away with that, and then you say that wasn't that constructive, the other person is going to want equal time, thank you. And so we train the moderators to hold the ground rules, hold the guardrails. And so I can tell you that exercise it's almost counterintuitive, because you start out with the most risky stuff, the worst stuff that people say about each other, but in a way that's safe. And then I want to tell you about the second exercise, and then I'll stop. Is the fishbowl exercise, and many folks who are present here know this is an ancient group exercise. You have one group in the middle, their chairs, and we do this all online too, by the way. You have one group in the middle, and the other group sitting in chairs in an outer circle. When you're in the outer circle, your job is to listen to the people in the inner circle, talk about something, and to learn about how they see things, and listen for anything in common. You have no response you make, verbal or nonverbal. And you realize how seldom in life we get a chance to listen to like-minded people who disagree with us, have a conversation among themselves where I don't have to respond. In fact, I can't respond. I can just listen, breathe, and take something in. And the two questions, and by the way, then when one group is finished, then they move to the outer circle, and the outer circle moves to the end. And the two questions are these: why are your side's values and policies good for the country? Why are your side's values and policies good for the country? How does conservatism, how does liberalism, how does it help our nation? Then the second question is, what are your reservations or concerns about your own side? What are your reservations or concerns about your own side? And again, and the moderator is holding people to some ground rules, one of them of which is, you can only talk about your own side. You can't talk about the other side. You only talk about people on your side. And again, the first question is what's wonderful about having the political philosophy that I have. And then the other is, what do I worry about my side? And when people land, and usually they do, they land that humility question, it's powerful.
I can imagine that. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of also public conversations, which
Yes,
is another therapy
right.
group. Yeah,
we got that from public conversations, the stereotypes exercise from them. And here's how Brave Angels has just grown organically. We adopted the stereotypes exercise from public conversations. They're now called, I think Essential Conversation. They changed their name.
Yeah, it's Essential Conversations.
Yeah. And then the second workshop we did, I was facilitating the Red group to come up with their stereotypes and how they would refute the stereotype. And one of the women in the group said, okay, folks, let's get real here. There are racists among us, and it's a terrible blight on our conservative movement. Why don't we say that? Why don't we go beyond saying, no, it's a stereotype that all Reds are racists and blah, blah, blah. Why don't we also say for these stereotypes what we think is true about them? And they did it. And the Blues were blown away. I can tell you then when the Blues did the fishbowl later on, they were into their humility. And I said to myself, we're going to add that to the exercise. And so in Braver Angels, we ask people to celebrate the best of what they have to offer from their side, and also to be humble and reflect.
Right.
That really, there's so much that does dovetail with the work that we do at the Taos Institute. This whole notion of multiplicity, that I contain multiple points of view.
Yeah.
And you bring that out in a very safe context. You've talked about the guardrails, the highly structured conversational configurations. You've talked about training the people who lead these conversations. Is there anything else that you might say about what you do to create that sense of safety?
A big part of this is that the workshops are designed with neutral language, neither red nor blue. So one of the challenges in the field of intergroup communication, conflict resolution, it's overwhelmingly liberal or blue. And then it's very easy to put into the directions, into the questions. It's very easy to put in a blue language, blue sensibility, which Reds just pick up and feel like this is not a good place for them. And so when we train the moderators, we really talk about this, that there's an intentionality about language. So in our skills workshops, we have a whole set of workshops where we teach skills in communicating across political divides. The examples we use in the skills workshops are carefully crafted as red examples and blue examples, which represent the best thinking on both of those sides. You don't have a moderator making that stuff up, because most of the moderators are blue, because that's who goes into this work, and they would bluify it. And we teach people not to freelance. So here's an example. Somebody asked me, she was thinking of beginning a Red Blue workshop with her favorite quote from Brene Brown, which was, "You can choose safety or courage, but not both. Choose courage." Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, Brene Brown came out against Donald Trump, so she's seen as a blue. And secondly, the whole language of safety is blue language. And then thirdly, you're suggesting to people coming in really nervous that it's not going to be safe, and they don't know anybody here, and they're going to have to be courageous. Now, you might do that. In fact, it might be entirely appropriate, you're doing a support, you're doing an enrichment group, people coming for personal growth, okay? And so they're used to that language. They read self-help books and they go, oh, that's a sweet way to begin the thing, courage, safety. Well, but that's not here, because this is more like couples therapy with people from different cultures.
So that is a strong point. The intentionality of language, and again, I've heard as you've talked, like-minded people who disagree with us. You know, that is a beautiful way of languaging, because then, if there is commonality, not find the commonality. If it's there, talk about it. And
Yep.
so there's a kind of spaciousness for everything to be okay. I think the other bit that is curious to me is how comfortable you are with the language of truth. We social constructionists sometimes soft sell that, and we get into valuing our relativity, which may be our blueness. But you are, in an interesting way, honoring everyone's truth and no truth.
Yeah.
And so the not shying away from that language, which is important, I think. Yeah, Bill.
That's a very interesting thought. I'm enjoying our conversation a lot here, by the way, because I hadn't really thought that one through. If we were to ever say that truth is what you see it as, we would alienate the reds. Okay. So on the other hand, we implicitly believe and model that there are multiple truths, but within those, there are commonalities. And so one of the things I'll say that I learned early on in this work is that as Americans, and this may happen in other cultures as well, we've gotten to the point where we confound the policy with the underlying value and aspiration. And so let's take the value of equal opportunity, that everyone has a chance to make it in this world if they apply effort. That is a universal American value. If an affirmative action was a policy created in the US in the 1960s to try to redress the forced lack of opportunity among African Americans, government-sponsored discrimination that kept a whole group in the population from having equal opportunity. It's a policy, and it's been around for a long time, and you can discuss that policy without assuming that the people who disagree with you don't also value equal opportunity. And that saying it sounds obvious, but I realize that we moralize policy debates because we end up thinking that if you think that affirmative action as a policy has outlived its usefulness, and that we should pursue other ways to have equal opportunity, that I think you're a racist. And if I want to hold on to it, you think that I am for the redistribution of resources, that I want equal outcomes. I want everybody to get a college degree, whether they try or not, okay? And then we see each other as occupying what I call different moral universes at that point. And we can't discuss the policy. And I want to give you a story about that from a workshop, an early workshop, where in our all-day workshop, there is an additional exercise in the afternoon, which is questions and answers, that we have the blues and the reds in separate rooms. They have 20 minutes to come up with 4 good questions for the other side. And I can tell you, when we first did the workshop, we described the difference between a good question, a curiosity question, and a gotcha question. And I naively thought that yours truly describing the difference would mean people could actually generate the questions, and they couldn't. They were gotcha questions. And so what we did was we had people separate spaces with a moderator who helps curate the questions. Okay, so in this particular workshop, there were both sides had a question for the other about affirmative action, where they stood on it, what they saw, pluses and any downsides. And I remember there was a woman who was a blue African-American woman who said that she talked about her own experience, that she was the first Black woman to be appointed to upper management in her company in its history. And she said, and without affirmative action, I don't think I would have had the opportunity. And she said, with the opportunity, now I have to say, this is quite memorable. She was, her whole appearance, her manner, gentle, kind, she was like a church lady, we call them in US language. And then she said, and once I had a chance, I kicked butt. I kicked butt. So hopefully that could be translated, but like, I had my opportunity and I took it. And so everybody laughed. It was just quite charming. But she said, without affirmative action, I wouldn't have the chance. Okay. And some Reds went, I mean, that's a compelling story. And then when it came for the Reds to answer the question, a woman, conservative, said, I run a small business and a lot of my work is contracts with the federal government, and affirmative action may have had a good purpose at the beginning, but it has gotten so into bureaucracy with so many categories. Now I have a position that I have to fill. I have to find a disabled veteran or I can't get this contract. And so what in the world has happened? Well, the Blues are listening to that and saying, oh, that's interesting. So can you see what I'm saying? On the ground, with people connecting their views to their life experiences, it's really compelling.
Well, let me pick up something. This is really fascinating, by the way. I often wonder what happens next. That is, in the sense that you bring people together, they can get on, they can begin to understand it, you can break down the stereotypes, but that sort of makes the assumption that once you've changed or understood, that will remain. But people go back to the other discussions and the conversations continue. And I raise that particularly as a question because the political structure is essentially antagonistic. And once we've got a two-party system with each party vying for its own hegemonic aims, it will continue to create strife. It will continue to be antagonistic and inform the public that that's how we must go on. So it seems to me that if you're creating real change at this level, perhaps it could lower the temperature at the national level. Perhaps bipartisanship could become something that would be we could adore again instead of the antagonisms.
Yeah, very important question. We know that one workshop for most people is not going to be transformative. It fades. Having said that, we are now attracting academic researchers who are studying our workshops, and we're finding that at least at the 6-month mark, after the Red Blue workshop, the depolarizing effect does endure. Okay. So we know it isn't just a feel good right at the end of the workshop. Yeah. However, we knew from the beginning we're interested in creating a movement here, not just an enrichment experience that fades. Yeah. And so here are some of the things we've done. We have alliances, state and local alliances. We're up to 100 of them around the country, where people who've been to workshops can connect with others, again, across the political divide, to continue the conversation, to sharpen their skills, and to sponsor other workshops. So there's a way to join. There's a way to join up. Okay, number one. Number two, we have like 8 or 9 different workshops now, and so people get multiple doses if they're interested. Okay, there's a families in politics workshop. There's a workshop on depolarizing conversations about race and public policy, for example. we're developing a work and politics workshop. So multiple doses, chance to organize locally, and then in the last 2 years, we have been developing connections with elected officials. So we have what we call Braver Politics Initiative now. So yesterday, here in Seattle, I'm from Minnesota, but I'm here in Seattle. I did a keynote and a workshop for county commissioners. So in the US, these are people we have the local town level, city level, and a county. So a state like Washington State has maybe 60 counties, and these are county governance folks, leaders. And they had me speak at the keynote about polarization. And then I did a workshop on managing difficult conversations as a county commissioner, and taught some of the Brave Angel skills, had them practice the skills. And so we're getting more interest at the level of elected officials. And of course, we do these workshops with them like we do with others. Lots of dialogue, lots of storytelling, lots of conversation. And then at the level of Congress, we've learned about and connected with groups like the Problem Solvers Caucus. Problem Solvers Caucus is 28 Democrats, 28 Republicans in the House of Representatives who are committed to bipartisanship and who have lunch together every week and work together on bipartisan proposals. And they had us in to lead a couple of workshops with their members. And so one of the next things we're going to be doing is well, let me back up. We have developed a new format for political debates by candidates. And so we've been doing those here in Washington State with a different set of ground rules than regular debates. And where members of the community, there's a little survey of their district about what are the most important issues that people want to hear their candidates talk about, and then a panel of reds and blues craft the questions, and then somebody with some moderating skill asks the questions. And here's one of the ground rules I love: you may not refer to the Democrats or the Republicans. You can only refer to what your opponent here is saying. No stereotyping. And then there's an academic group who's evaluating what people take from those. So that level, we're engaging those folks. And I want to just say how then we adapt what we do to those audiences. The stereotypes exercise I described before would not work with politicians because it's too risky.
Yeah.
So what we're doing with them, I did this in New Hampshire last year, did this with members of Congress. We begin with this question: what life experiences have influenced your values and beliefs about public policy and public service? What life experiences have influenced your values and beliefs about public policy and public service? I've done 4 of those, one with members of the New Hampshire legislature and some more in Congress. Those were some of the most powerful small group conversations I've been in my entire career.
Yeah, I think it's just delightful to hear how welcoming your work is to people sharing their own views, their own experiences, connecting to, as you just said, their past. There are several questions coming in the chat, Bill, that have to do with, this is wonderful, and what about the people who are not red or blue? Now, I personally think we can't all do everything for everybody. And you have a very important bit of work you're doing, and really calling out red and blue is masterful and courageous in my mind. But what is the thinking of your team about the people who are independent, the people who are green in the United States, the people who might be of yet a different orientation.
Sure. This is important, and we we think and talk about this a lot. Only one of our workshops requires people to declare red or blue, and that's the red blue workshop. None of the others do. So there's lots of opportunity to get involved. At the leadership level, you can be what we call purple, neither red nor blue. And so there's room for everybody. When we have another workshop I haven't mentioned is called a common ground workshop, where it's an issue like abortion, like immigration, like ensuring trustworthy elections. There you have to be on one side or the other of the issue, because you have to have a clash in some ways. You have to have some separateness, but you could be a blue or red there, but you have to be on, you have to declare yourself pro-life or pro-choice in order to create the friction that's necessary for something to come out of it. So the short answer is everybody's welcome. Only one workshop we say you have to declare.
This is a bit of a spontaneous question, and you may not want to go there, but I'd like to know about your background. What is it about your background that enables you to go into the fire, stand in the fire, and hold out your arms to people of different points of view? Because my work in a lot of corporate settings is there's a lot of conflict avoidance. And you just jump right in there. You've got folks who say, if we don't have that, we can't do our work. So how'd you get there, Bill?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I always respond like the first thing comes to my mind. And the first thing came to my mind is that I've been a marriage and couples therapist for 45 years. And to do that work, you have to be willing to go into the hearth of the conflict and take both people's sides. Not be neutral, in a sense. I'm on both people's sides. I want both parties to bring their best, and that's my job. And also keep them from harming each other. And that I can't do my work as a couples therapist unless I can empathically get the experience and the perceived reality of both people. I have to get it, deeply get it. If I can't get it within the first couple sessions, it's an emergency. And I have to do something fast in order to be able to understand where somebody's coming from. And so that's the first thing that comes to my mind, and then carrying that over, I have my own political views, but my mission is, one of the things I say is I talk about the way in which you can engage in resistance to political powers and so on. You can resist, replace. So what are you going to replace them with if your side wins? And then the third one is repair. How do we repair the relationships that have gotten us to where we are? And my view is that the resistance is well staffed in our country. Not as much about replacement, but my gift, if you will, and my zone is repair. And that's how I am as a therapist. That's how I see myself with the country, that I'm in the repair, in the healing business. And I think it comes out of why I was attracted to couples and family therapy, and I carry it over to the country.
And yet, oh wait, Ken, are you speaking? No.
It looks like you're muted, Ken. Yeah, your lips were moving, Ken.
But we didn't hear you. Bill, when you say you're in the business of repair and healing, what is interesting to me is you don't need people to be broken. You want to see the best of everybody and help them repair the relatedness.
Yes, that's right.
It's not about the person.
That's right.
Wrong or bad or broken.
Exactly.
Let's heal the relatedness.
Let's hear the relatedness. So here's my own personal philosophy. I think what we need in America, and I can't speak for other countries represented here, we need the best of conservatism and the best of liberalism. And my job is to help people bring their best with humility to the table.
I love the repair relatedness. It's beautiful. I wanted to ask you a practical question. It seems to me you have an enormous number of events happening all over the country. Who are those people who are doing these? Are these volunteers? And if so, how do you generate that kind of voluntary push?
It's volunteers. We have a staff that raises money because we don't charge for anything we do, but it's almost entirely volunteers who are doing the work. An early decision we made was that our workshops could be conducted by people with some facilitation skill background, some training, but not master level. Okay, because if you create something that requires master level skills, you cannot scale it.
Yeah.
So our very first workshop we did on a lark in 2016, not thinking we'd do anything else beyond that. It took everything I had to hold that together, and I realized the design needed to be changed.
Yeah.
And so made it so that people with good enough skills could do these workshops. Secondly, we decided we're not going to charge for our workshops so that they were widely available. And thirdly, we were not going to charge for the training of the moderators, because if you develop something that you charge a fair amount of money for people to learn to do, they're going to have to recoup the money.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll see it as a revenue stream for themselves, which is not bad. That's what we do with professional training. We did not want that because you cannot scale that way, charging and professional, development. And so we decided then to put the training of the moderators online, so that somebody from Idaho in the US, where there's not any other braver angels, they could say, hey, I can do that training, and it's free and it's online and it's self-paced, and then I can start doing workshops. And so lots of seed spread. And what it took, Ken, was a hope that people could do these workshops well, without intensive training, without me being involved in training everybody directly. And that if they're not good at it, they'll drift away from it. And those turned out to be accurate. People can do them. The evaluations are quite consistent, and some people are not that good at it and they drift away. And the other thing is that nobody's alone doing our workshops. There are organizers or others. So if somebody's not very good at it, they sort of get asked to do other things in the organization. But going back to your question, it's almost entirely operated and run at the grassroots level by volunteers who want to help their country.
How do they get into this? Where do they find out about you? Just hearsay?
Well, it's just word of mouth. We don't have and we're getting a lot of media attention.
Yeah, I have seen that. That's true.
A lot of media attention.
You were in the New York Times last week.
So lots of media. So people find us there, and then we bring them in. So we are actually, more than anything I've worked on, because I've worked on many, many community projects, this is the first one that has been scaling. So some of these decisions that I'm describing, because I know you have an interest in this conference and scaling, these decisions early on, the workshops are going to have to be doable by people with pretty good skills, not high level skills. Okay, that decision. The decision to make the training free and accessible online for moderators, crucial. The decision not to charge for workshops. I mean, all of these, the decision to create alliances, red-blue alliances, when people have gone to workshops, then the alliances, they do other things. So I'm in Seattle here. The alliance worked on getting these workshops going with county commissioners. People, a lot of American politics is local. And so when somebody calls their county commissioner and says, hey, I'm a constituent, I'm part of this Braver Angels, can I talk to you about it? They go, oh, okay, tell me about that. In Minnesota, when we did our skills workshop for legislatures, we got our members. By the way, it's a membership organization. People can join for $12 a year. We got our members to email their state representatives recommending they go to the Brave Angels workshop. And at the local level, the state representative doesn't get a lot of emails from constituents. And so a constituent writes and says, this is coming up. I know it's in your inbox. And so when I asked some people why they came, their constituents recommended. And then when they came, we got back to their member who said, thank you. Thank you for going to this workshop.
Fantastic.
So that's sort of the stuff we're doing.
So I hear the structure is also an important part of it. The training of the moderators is not just in some skills that you can do, it's in the structure. This
That's
is
right.
how we do it.
Yes.
And that's very common with appreciative inquiry.
Mhm,
We have our processes that enable us to bring hundreds of people. We talk about all the stakeholders being in the room, and it's their meeting and their language and all of that. So there's so many common points there. Again, I'm kind of keeping my eye on this chat, and there are some questions about the possibilities of Braver Angels work both with non-red blue situations. So perhaps you can tell us a story that's not the red blue. You said only one of the workshops is a red blue workshop. You're meeting with people who do collaborative divorce. Is there a story you can tell that's non-red blue? And then the other question is internationally.
Yes.
And people are saying, how can I get involved? Well, I can answer that. We've already heard, Bill. Just go online and learn how to do it, and then go do it.
Well,
But there's two pieces, Bill.
So so I have the second question in my brain. What was the first one?
The first one is a non-red blue situation.
Well, our zone, our lane is political polarization and issues that relate to political polarization. And so we've been really clear. The skills, and by the way, none of our skills are original to us. Okay, we've applied them in the political zone. Okay, and so we get invitations to. We'll train members of a school board in the skills of connecting to red and blue constituents, but we don't go into a school board and help them get along with each other better and solve their problems. Members, say, of a church or religious community who are struggling with culture and values issues about gay marriage or women priests or something like that. We don't do that. Okay, yeah. So the skills can apply, but that's not what we do. We have a zone, we have a lane, and we stick to it, and we don't get ourselves pulled into everything else. But what we tell moderators is, you have the skill set, go do it. Just don't make it a Braver Angels thing. Okay. Now the international, we're getting increasing interest, and so somebody who is qualified to facilitate and to teach skills based on their background can apply to become a Braver Angels moderator. By the way, there's an application, Diana. It doesn't, you don't just get on the website and get, there's an application. Yeah. And then they can apply it how they like in their own country. It would not call it Braver Angels because we're not there, but we have trained moderators from other countries and would be happy to informally consult. Okay, but we're trying to practice the humility too. What we know, our skill set, our workshops are about the American political context, and we don't claim to know other contexts, but we're happy to have people who want to do that work in their context learn our approach and then apply it where they are. So they go on Braver Angels website, learn, volunteer, moderator, they apply. I'm the one that reviews the applications, and then they're welcome to learn what we're doing. But when they do the workshops, don't say it is an official Braver Angels workshop, okay? Because we would not have vetted the adaptation that is necessary. We're very careful about every adaptation of our workshop, that we have reds and blues, go through it very carefully. So I hope that's an adequate answer. We welcome involvement for people to learn to adapt what they're doing, what we're doing, to the extent it helps their context.
So I find it refreshing that you can say, this is our lane, this is our zone, this is what we do. And we learn as we go. And we are generous with our skills, but you can use it somewhere else, but don't be us.
That's right.
Because we are dedicated to the political polarization in the United States. Yeah. I find that refreshing, and I find it, I would say, probably one of your success factors. And so thank you. Ken, we have a few more minutes with Bill. Do you have another question?
Well, I've dozens of questions. This is so fascinating. But as I see it, so you've got this emerging group of people volunteering and expansive and so on. At some point, you've got to have a superstructure, that is, how to coordinate all this. Yeah. There must be a portion of this which doesn't operate on voluntary. It's people who keep up with all this, who develop the websites and so on. How do you fund all that?
Well, we have $12 a year for members. We have 11,000 members. Okay, that provides about 20% of our budget. And what they do is they get access to everything we're doing in regular newsletters and podcasts and so on. And then the rest of it is another chunk is individual donors, people who choose to donate more money. A lot of people donate more than $12. So private gifts, and then foundations. So one of the things I'm out here in Seattle doing, in addition to the workshop, is meeting with a foundation. And what we carefully go after are red and blue donors and red and blue foundations. Because if we ever get all of our money, I have to tell you, people get on our website and they look very carefully. Reds and blues, highly polarized people, look at where our money comes from. And some people have to hold their nose to join us when they see that there's some funders who are more conservative foundations, and then they're blues. And then the reds look at it and say, oh my goodness, you've got this liberal foundation here. And we go after both. And if that doesn't work for somebody, they can join the resistance. We're not the resistance, we're the repair. Okay. And we have to carefully look for money from multiple sources across the political divide. It's part of our DNA.
So it seems to me, if you take the foundations, or your organization's aim seriously, that somehow you would deconstruct yourselves. That is, that there would be we wouldn't remain red and blue. We would remain understanding of each other wherever we were. That is, that you would somehow, depolarization would be your aim.
It would be wonderful to not be needed anymore.
Yeah.
And I didn't answer the other part of your question, that we have a staff. We started out with a staff of 3, and we're probably up to 15 or 18 staff members now.
That's a lot.
And so we have a budget, we have fundraisers, but it is a highly decentralized organization. There's so much that goes on at local levels that the leadership nationally learns about. So part of the secret sauce here, we have no, this drives some people crazy. We have no organizational chart of who reports to who. We have a series of circles, and it drives some people crazy when and some people, they're not sure they give us money because they want to know who ultimately somebody on the ground reports to. So we have volunteers who are, quote, supervising staff members. We have, because there's a role that only a staff person can do. And we don't talk about reporting to, but the person, if you will, with more responsibility in their circle is a volunteer. And this doesn't compute in organizational charts, but it works for us.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that there's a way in which this could morph into a social movement of sorts.
Well, okay, thank you, Ken, because that's maybe a good thing to end on. We are now, our goal this year is to create more organized partnerships with large membership organizations who have not been in the political world, both red and blue. We're talking with some large nonprofits who we want to have a partnership with to see if they're interested in working on the depolarization too. I mean, organizations with millions of members, because a social movement, an organization like ours, is not a social movement. The social movement requires multiple sectors, and that is a big part of what we're doing. We have demonstrated we can scale our particular niche, and we have more and more interest from political leaders. But to make an impact on the country, we need, for example, the Mormon Church of America and the Southern Baptist Union, and the Episcopal Church of America, and we need companies. So we're now getting approaches from companies that do online service to millions of people who are concerned about the polarization that's happening on their sites. And they see us as having expertise in this area. So that's the level right now we're engaging in.
So perhaps we ought to have a conversation with the Taos Institute.
Yes, yes.
I mean,
Well, I don't know if you can take 10 seconds and share. Somebody asked where the name came from, Braver Angels.
So we started out with the name Better Angels from the Abraham Lincoln phrase, the better angels of our nature. It was from his first inaugural address just before the Civil War. He said, we must be friends, not enemies, and let's call upon the better angels of our nature. That's how we started. And then somebody had owned the trademark for Better Angels. And this is America now, folks. Internationally, they threatened to sue us if we kept our name. They said they would drive us into the ground. We had no money, and so we changed our name to Braver Angels in order to have continuity with Better Angels. And we liked Braver because this takes courage. So that's the origins of the name.
Beautiful.
Great. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Bill, for being with us today.
Absolutely.
And sharing your story. It's inspiring, that movement you're creating across the US. And I know that there's a lot of people on this call from other countries that are saying, you know, how can we take that movement into our own regions and countries and communities around the globe? So let's keep that conversation going. Diana and Ken, thank you so much for hosting our conversation today and nurturing the questions to bring the conversation alive for everyone. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you again, Bill. Marvelous.
Oh, this is a joy. This is to have a chance to have a dialogue with you folks with this fascinating group behind us, around us, is just a joy. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.